A cowboy once spent his last $5 on a ticket he never thought would win. It was the spring of 1887 in the dusty town of Silver Creek, New Mexico Territory, where hope was as scarce as rain and loneliness clung to men like dust on sweat. Silas Mercer had worked 3 long years on the Barlow Ranch. Dawn to dusk, sunburned and sore, sleeping in a lean-to behind the stables that smelled of hay, horse sweat, and quiet despair. He owned nothing but a worn-out hat, a pair of boots held together by prayers, and 50 cents saved in a tobacco tin. But even that felt like too much to carry when the silence in that shed grew so heavy, it pressed on his ribs like a stone. Then a stranger came through town with a wild idea. A marriage lottery. $5 a ticket. 1 draw, 1 bride. No questions asked. Most men laughed it off as a scam or a joke. But Silas? He felt something stir in his chest. Not hope, not exactly, but the ghost of it. That night he stared at his boots and made a choice. He walked into the saloon, handed over his last $5, and took a crumpled slip of paper like a man reaching for a rope in a flood. He told himself he'd lose, told himself it was foolish. But deep down, in the hollow place behind his ribs, a small voice whispered, "What if someone out there is just as alone as you?" 2 weeks later, the whole town gathered in the square. A wooden platform had been erected near the general store, and on it stood a woman who made the crowd fall silent. She wasn't what anyone expected. Tall, nearly a head above the tallest man there, with shoulders broad as a dray horse and eyes dark as canyon shadow. Her hair fell in a heavy black curtain down her back, and her hands were bound with rope, not tight, but tied with a kind of grim ceremony, like she was both offering and sacrifice. Men shifted uneasily. Some grinned. Others looked away. But Silas? He felt his stomach drop like a stone dropped down a dry well. This wasn't a wife. This was something else entirely. Something fierce, something wounded, something real. The auctioneer, a portly man with a cigar and a voice like gravel, called out the winning number. And when Silas heard his own ticket read aloud, the world seemed to tilt. People turned to stare. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. "That's Mercer," someone muttered. "Poor fool." A man behind him chuckled. "Hope he likes sleeping on his back, if he survives the night." Silas forced his legs to move. He pushed through the crowd until he stood at the base of the platform. The woman looked down at him. Her face was calm, unreadable. But her eyes, those deep, dark eyes, held a story he couldn't yet read. They were the eyes of someone who had stopped expecting kindness from the world. "Congratulations, son," the auctioneer boomed, slapping Silas on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. "You've just won yourself Lozen Two-Rivers. Strong as an ox, quiet as a ghost, and yours by the terms of the lottery, provided you make it official at the settlement office within 3 days. After that, she goes back on the block." He untied her wrists with a theatrical flourish, as if presenting a prize stallion. Lozen rubbed her wrists slowly, her gaze never leaving Silas. Then, without a word, she stepped down from the platform, and that's when he truly saw her height. She stood so close he had to tilt his head back just to meet her eyes. "You don't want this," she said. Her voice was low, steady, not angry. Just certain. Silas opened his mouth, but no words came. Because she was right. He didn't want this. Not the spectacle, not the stares, not the weight of a life he hadn't asked for. But walking away, that felt like something worse. Like betrayal. Before he could answer, a voice cut through the thinning crowd. "Well, well, look who drew the lucky straw." It was Harlan Briggs, a ranch hand from Barlow's, flanked by 3 others. Men Silas knew all too well. They swaggered over, boots kicking up dust, grins sharp as knives. "Spent your boot money on a squaw, Mercer?" Harlan sneered, his eyes raking over Lozen like she was livestock. "Hope she don't snap you in half trying to mount you." The men behind him laughed, a cruel, barking sound that made Silas's skin crawl. Lozen didn't flinch, didn't speak, but Silas saw her hands curl into fists at her sides. Harlan took a step closer, reaching out as if to touch her arm. "Let's see what all the fuss is about." Silas moved without thinking. He stepped between them. "Leave her be, Harlan," but Lozen was faster. Her hand shot out and caught Harlan's wrist mid-reach. Her grip was iron. Harlan's grin vanished, replaced by shock, then fury. He tried to yank free, but she held firm. She leaned down slightly, bringing her face level with his. "Touch me again," she said, voice so quiet the crowd had to lean in to hear. "And you'll bury that hand." The square went dead silent. Harlan finally pulled free, face flushed red. "You hear that? She's threatening me. That's assault, Mercer. You better teach your woman some manners before someone else does." He turned to the onlookers, raising his voice. "This is what happens when you let savages walk around like they're people. They forget their place." The word savage hit Silas like a fist. He saw Lozen's jaw tighten, her shoulders go rigid. And in that moment he understood. This wasn't just about him. It was about every man in this town who saw her as less than human. Something to mock. To use, to break. Silas stepped forward, placing himself squarely between Harlan and Lozen. His voice was quieter than he intended, but steady. "She's not yours to touch. And she's not yours to insult." Harlan stared at him for a long beat, then laughed. "You defending her now? A woman who could probably bench press you? That's rich, Mercer. Real rich." He turned to leave, then paused. "Enjoy your wedding night, if you survive it." When they were gone, Silas turned to Lozen. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "You didn't need to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "They'll make my life harder now. I know that too." She tilted her head slightly. "Why did you buy the ticket?" Silas hesitated. The truth felt too raw, too pathetic. But standing there with her towering over him and the weight of the whole town's judgment pressing down, he found himself speaking honestly. "Because I was alone, and I thought, maybe someone else was too." Lozen didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer. "The man who ran this lottery, he bought me from a trader 3 months ago. I was taken from my people after I fought men who tried to hurt a child. They said I was dangerous, said I couldn't be trusted. So they sold me." She paused, gaze distant. "I've been sold 4 times since. Each time they promised it would be different. Each time it was the same." Silas felt something crack open inside his chest. "I'm not like them." "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe you just haven't had the chance yet." Before he could respond, the town marshal approached. A grizzled man with silver in his hair and a badge that looked like it had seen too much. "You Mercer?" "Yes, sir. Got a complaint from Harlan Briggs. Says your woman threatened him. That true?" Silas glanced at Lozen. She watched the marshal with calm, unreadable eyes. He could have told her to stay quiet, could have let this play out the way it always did, or he could do something different. "Harlan tried to touch her without permission," Silas said. She stopped him. "That's all." The marshal studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You got 3 days to make this official, or she goes back on the block. My advice? Keep her out of town until then. People around here don't take kindly to trouble." He walked away, leaving them alone in the emptying square. Lozen spoke first. "You have a place to take me?" Silas thought of the lean-to, the thin blanket, the smell of regret. "Not really." "Then we have a problem." The lean-to behind the Barlow Ranch was barely large enough for 1 man, let alone 2. Silas stood in the doorway, shame burning in his throat like whiskey. Lozen stepped past him, ducking under the low roof. She took in the single blanket, the wooden crate, the small pile of belongings in the corner. "You gave up your last $5 for a chance at something better than this," she said. "It wasn't a question," Silas nodded, "and now you're stuck with me." She sat against the wall. Even sitting, she took up most of the space. "You should have walked away when you saw me on that platform. Told them you made a mistake." "I thought about it," Silas admitted, sitting across from her, their knees almost touching. "But then I thought about what would happen to you if I did." Lozen's eyes narrowed. "You think you saved me?" "No, I think I made everything more complicated." He rubbed his face. "I don't know what I'm doing. Don't know how to be married. Don't know how to take care of someone else when I can barely take care of myself." "Then why are you still here?" The question hung between them. Silas looked at her, really looked, and saw past the height, the strength, the intimidating presence. He saw exhaustion in her eyes, the way her shoulders sagged when she thought no one was watching, the slight tremor in her hands before she clenched them into fists. "Because I'm tired of being alone," he said quietly. "And I think maybe you are too." Lozen held his gaze for a long moment. Then she looked away, jaw tight. "Being alone is safer." "Safer than what?" "Than trusting someone who will eventually hurt you." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. "I trusted my people. They sold me. I trusted the first man who bought me. He worked me like an animal until I collapsed. The second one tried to hurt me. The third just sold me before I could fight back. And now here I am, with you, a man I don't know, in a place I don't want to be, with 3 days before they decide what to do with me next." Silas felt something tighten in his chest. I'm not going to hurt you. You say that now. I mean it. Lozen let out a short laugh, no humor in it. Every man means it, until they don't. She leaned her head back against the wall, closing her eyes. You should sleep. Tomorrow you'll need to explain to your boss why you brought home a woman taller than his horses. Silas wanted to argue, to say something that would make her believe him, but he saw the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. So instead, he reached for the blanket and held it out. Here, you take it. She opened her eyes, looking at the blanket, then at him. Where will you sleep? I'll figure something out. That's foolish. Maybe. He kept holding it out. But I'm not making you sleep on bare ground. Lozen stared at him another moment, then took the blanket. Their fingers brushed, and Silas felt something electric pass between them. She must have felt it too, because she pulled back quickly, eyes widening slightly. For just a second, he saw something vulnerable flash across her face before the walls came back up. Then, boots on gravel. They both froze. Someone was coming. Silas stepped outside. It was Barlow himself, the ranch owner, a heavy man with a face like weathered leather and eyes that missed nothing. He looked past Silas into the lean-to where Lozen sat, and his expression darkened. Heard you got yourself a wife. Mercer. Yes, sir. Heard she's Apache. Yes, sir. Barlow chewed silently for a moment, then spat into the dirt. You got 48 hours to get her off my property. I don't care where you go or what you do, but she can't stay here. He paused. And if you're smart, you'll go with her. Because come dawn, every man in that bunkhouse is gonna know there's an Apache woman sleeping 20 feet away, and I can't promise they'll leave her alone. He turned and walked away, leaving Silas standing in the darkness with the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Inside, Lozen spoke quietly. You heard him. You have 48 hours to decide if I'm worth losing everything you have. There was no challenge in her voice, just resignation, like she'd already decided his answer. Silas didn't sleep that night. He sat outside the lean-to, watching the stars wheel across the sky, listening to Lozen's steady breathing inside. His mind raced over Barlow's words. Every man in that bunkhouse. When the first light crept over the hills, Silas stood, stiff and sore, and made a decision. It was probably the stupidest of his life, but it was the only one that felt right. He knocked softly on the door. Lozen, we need to move. She was awake instantly, alert, ready. Where are we going? Away, before the others wake. There's a settlement about 2 days' ride north. Small place. Might have work. Might have room for us. She stood, ducking under the low ceiling. You're leaving the ranch. I don't have a choice. You do. She stepped closer. You can tell Barlow I ran off. Tell him I was too strong to hold. No one would question it. You could keep your job. Keep your life. Silas met her gaze. And what happens to you? The same thing that always happens, she said flatly. I survive. I always do. That's not good enough. It has to be. Because I won't let you destroy yourself for me. I'm not worth it. She said it with such conviction that Silas felt something break inside him. She truly believed it. You're wrong, he said quietly. About yourself. About what you're worth. And I'm done pretending I don't see it. He turned toward the main house. Wait here. I need to get my pay from Barlow. He won't give it to you. Then I'll take what I'm owed. Silas had never stolen in his life, but something had shifted in him during that long night. Something angry. Something protective. He slipped into the dark house, found the cash box on Barlow's desk, counted out 3 months' wages, nothing more, and turned to leave. Barlow stood in the doorway. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Barlow sighed and stepped aside. Get out of here, Mercer. And don't come back, Silas blinked. You're letting me go? I'm letting you leave with what's yours. There's a difference. His voice was hard but not unkind. I meant what I said last night. I can't have her here. But I also can't stomach what those men would do if she stayed. So take your money, take your woman, and get as far from here as you can. When Silas returned, Lozen was waiting outside, her few belongings wrapped in cloth. She saw the money in his hand. He gave it to you? More or less. We need to go. Now. They moved through the pre-dawn darkness, keeping to the shadows. The ranch stayed quiet behind them. As the sun broke over the hills, painting the sky in orange and red, Lozen stopped and looked back. I was trying to remember the last time someone chose me over something easier. She said softly, I can't. Silas didn't know what to say, so he just stood beside her, shoulders almost touching, and watched the sunrise. After a moment, she asked, "This settlement, you've been there before?" "No. So you don't know if there's work, or a place to stay, or if they'll even let me through the gates?" "No," Silas admitted. Lozen nodded slowly. Then, for the first time since he'd met her, she smiled, small, cautious, like something fragile breaking through stone. "Then I guess we find out together." They walked side by side as the sun climbed higher. Behind them, the ranch vanished into the distance, and with it, the only life Silas had known for years. He should have felt afraid, but walking beside Lozen with morning light on his face, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. That hope lasted exactly 3 miles. That's when they saw the riders. 4 men on horseback. Moving fast, and leading them was Harlan Briggs. They slowed, spreading across the road to block the path. Harlan sat center, smug. One man held a coiled rope. Another had a rifle across his saddle. "Well, well," Harlan called. "Look what we found. A thief stealing property and running in the night." He looked at Lozen. "Turns out that lottery wasn't legal, which means she doesn't belong to you. She belongs to the man who paid for her, and he wants his investment back." Silas's stomach dropped. "You're lying, am I?" Harlan grinned. "Ask her." Silas looked at Lozen. Her face was still, but fury burned in her eyes. "The merchant, he buys people no one will miss, sells them to whoever has money, and when they try to leave," she gestured at the riders, "he sends men to bring them back." The rifleman shifted, raising his weapon slightly. "2 choices, Mercer. Walk away now, or find out what happens to thieves around here." 4 armed men, Silas and Lozen on foot, nowhere to run. The smart choice was obvious. Silas looked at Lozen. She was watching him, waiting, expecting him to walk away like everyone else. "No," Silas said. Harlan raised an eyebrow. "No," Silas repeated. "She doesn't belong to anyone. Not to me, not to your merchant, not to you." He stepped between Lozen and the riders. "Turn around. Tell him you couldn't find us." One rider laughed. "You got nerve, Mercer. Stupid nerve." He started to dismount. That's when Lozen moved. She yanked the reins of the nearest horse, making it rear and throw its rider. Before the others could react, she grabbed the fallen man's rifle and swung it like a club, striking another horse's flank. It bolted, rider clinging on. Harlan went for his pistol, but Silas lunged, grabbing his leg and pulling him from the saddle. They crashed into the dust, fists flying. Pain exploded in Silas's ribs, but he held on. The rifleman aimed at Lozen. She dove as the shot rang out. Then she charged, slamming into the horse, making it stumble. The rider dropped the rifle. Lozen threw it into the brush. "Get out of here," she told the last rider, voice like steel, "before I change my mind about letting you live." He didn't hesitate, kicked his horse and fled. Harlan scrambled up, spat blood, and ran for his own horse. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving only dust and gunpowder. Silas stood slowly, clutching his ribs. Lozen was at his side instantly. "You're hurt. I'll live," he tried to smile. "You didn't need my help." "Yes, I did." She examined his side. "If you hadn't grabbed Harlan, he'd have shot me. You saved my life. You saved mine first, back in the square." They looked at each other. Really looked. Then Lozen did something unexpected. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. Brief, sacred, a promise. When she pulled back, her voice was serious. "We can't go north now. They'll watch the roads. We go east into the hills. My people used to hunt there. There are caves. Hidden places. Your people? The ones who sold you? Not all of them. Just the ones who were afraid." She started walking. "The ones who aren't afraid. They might still help." Silas followed, each step sending pain through his ribs. But he followed anyway, because going back meant losing her, and he wasn't ready to do that. The climb took all day. By midday, Silas was sweating through his shirt. Lozen walked ahead, sure-footed, stopping often to wait for him, scanning the rocks like she read a language he couldn't see. They reached the caves at sunset. The entrance was hidden behind brush and stone. Inside, the space opened cool and dry. Faint light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating red and black symbols painted on the wall. Lozen traced them gently. "This was a winter camp. My grandmother brought me here as a child, taught me which plants heal, which tracks mean deer, which mean danger." She knelt, moved aside stones and revealed a cache. Old blankets, dried herbs, a bone-handled knife. She left these for anyone who needed them, said, "The land provides, if you're wise enough to prepare." Silas sat on a flat rock as Lozen unwrapped herbs and crushed them in her palms. The smell was sharp, clean, like mint and sage. She pressed the poultice to his ribs, then wrapped them tight with cloth strips. "Why did you really leave your people?" he asked quietly. Her hands paused. "The child I saved, she was my niece. 8 years old. Traders came to our camp, wanted more than horses. When they saw her," Lozen's jaw tightened. "I stopped them. Broke one man's arm, nearly killed the other. But the traders had money, had influence. They told the marshal we attacked without cause. The elders were afraid of soldiers. So they made a choice." She looked up. "They sold me to the same men I'd fought. Called it justice. Said it would keep the peace." Silas felt cold fury in his gut. "And your niece?" "Safe. That's all that matters." He stood, ignoring the pain, and crossed to her. "You sacrificed everything for her. I'd do it again. I know." He touched her shoulder. She didn't pull away. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." Lozen turned to face him. They were close enough to feel each other's breath. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you keep choosing me? You could have walked away a dozen times." Silas thought of the shed, the loneliness, the $5 ticket. "Because I spent 3 years telling myself I was fine alone. And then I saw you, and realized I'd been lying to myself the whole time. I needed someone who understood what it felt like to be thrown away. Someone strong enough to survive it. Someone like you." Lozen stared at him, then closed the distance. Her lips met his in a kiss that was fierce, desperate, full of relief. Silas froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back, hands framing her face. She was taller, stronger, overwhelming, but in that moment, holding her and being held by her, he'd never felt more certain of anything in his life. When they pulled apart, breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "If we do this, there's no going back. They'll hunt us, the merchant, the town, maybe even my people. We'll have nothing but each other." Silas smiled. "I've been living with nothing for years. Having you sounds like everything." Outside the sunset, darkness settled over the hills. Neither heard the footsteps. Neither saw the figure at the cave entrance, until a voice spoke from the shadows. "Lozen." They spun. A woman stood there. Older, gray streaking her dark hair, carrying herself with quiet authority. Lozen went rigid. "Nalani." The name sounded like both prayer and curse. Nalani stepped inside. Same high cheekbones. Same fierce eyes. "Hello, sister." Lozen's hand went to her knife. "I didn't come to fight," Nalani said, palms out. "The elders sent me. They bought your freedom." She pulled a folded paper from her coat. "This deed says you belong to no one. Not the merchant, not the traders. You're free." Lozen stared at it like it might burn her. "Why?" "Because my daughter hasn't stopped asking for you. Every night. When is Aunt Lozen coming home? She's 10 now. Remembers what you did for her." Nalani's voice cracked. "She changed her name last year. Now it's Kai. She who stands." She wanted a name that meant her life was her own. Lozen's eyes filled. "What's the price?" "No price, but a condition. If you come back, you come for good. No more running, but..." Nalani looked at Silas. "You cannot bring him. The elders won't allow an outsider in camp. Too much risk." Silas's chest tightened. "Of course. There was always a condition." He turned to Lozen. "Take it. Go home, see your niece." She whipped around. "What, you'd let me go?" "You'd have everything. A home, family, real freedom. Not just running. And what would you have? You'll go back to sheds and loneliness. I'll survive." "I always do." She stepped close, eyes blazing. "Knowing I left you? Knowing I chose comfort over the one person who actually chose me first?" She turned to Nalani. "Tell the elders I appreciate it, but I'm not coming. Not without him." Nalani sighed. "I knew you'd say that." She tucked the paper away. "But there's something else. The merchant's furious. He's offering money for your whereabouts. You have a day, maybe 2. "Where can we go?" Silas asked. "West, 3 days' ride. A settlement called Dry Fork. Rough enough that men don't ask questions. Far enough that the merchant's reach doesn't stretch." She paused. "Maybe the elders are wrong. Maybe choosing someone who chooses you back is worth more than safety." Then she was gone. Lozen stood very still. Finally, she turned to Silas. "You were really going to let me go?" "Yes, even though it would have destroyed me." She pulled him into a fierce embrace. "You're an idiot. A stubborn, selfless idiot." She looked up at him. "I could have that safe life. All I'd have to do is walk away from you. But I don't want easy. I want real. And you're the only real thing I've found in years." Silas cupped her face. "Then we go west. 3 days. We start over. Together. Together," she repeated, and kissed him, softer this time. Like a promise, they left before dawn. But as they moved through the night, hooves echoed behind them. 6 riders, maybe more. Not hiding. Confident. Lozen led Silas through a hidden passage in the cave. Narrow, dark, painful for his ribs. They emerged on a rocky hillside, torches flickering below. "We go slow together," Lozen said, wrapping his arm over her shoulders. For 2 days they ran, through riverbeds, over ridges, beneath stars. Silas burned with fever, but Lozen carried him, whispered prayers in her tongue, kept them moving. On the 3rd day they saw it. Dry Fork, smoke from chimneys, hammers ringing, a cluster of cabins in a valley. The boarding house matron took one look and said, $2 a week. Includes meals. No trouble." "No trouble," Lozen agreed. That night, in a room with a real bed and a lock on the door, Silas took her hand. "No ceremony. No fancy dress. Just us. It's perfect," she said, "because it's ours." 3 months later, a judge signed their papers. But the real marriage happened long before. In the square, in the cave, on the run. Every time they chose each other over fear. In Dry Fork, Silas worked the sawmill. Lozen mended saddles, her strong hands earning respect. Folks learned not to ask where they came from. Learned that some bonds are forged in fire and can't be broken by law or land or lies. And when strangers asked Silas if he regretted that $5 ticket, he always smiled and said, "Best investment I ever made. If this story of courage, loyalty, and love against all odds moved you, click the video on your screen now to discover another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where the wild heart of the West still beats in those who refuse to be broken. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a super chat if you believe stories like this deserve to be told. Your support keeps the spirit of the Old West alive, one epic story at a time.